Hi everyone, my name is Denzel Chetty and I lead the Academic Development Open Virtual Hub or ADOVH at the University of South Africa. It's my pleasure in the next few minutes just to quickly share with you a little bit about the work that we do as ADOVH. But let me provide some background. The Academic Development Open Virtual Hub was established in 2020 as part of a COVID-19 responsiveness grant. Now, this looked specifically to develop our students' digital competencies, not just inside the University of South Africa, but also nationally, so that they can function as effective online learners in a more digitalized learning environment. To achieve this, ADOVH is built on four principles. So when we look at the terminology or the term ADOVH, academic development firstly means that our focus is really on student development. Secondly, when we think of openness, we are really thinking about no restrictions, no cost, and knowledge that is available for public consumption. The idea of virtual implies that much of our deliverables are done through an online medium. And when we think of online medium, we are also thinking of synchronous and asynchronous opportunities. The idea of an hub is very critical for us because it talks about the ability to bring in specialized skills, specialized resources into a network space to benefit the country, benefit the continent, and also benefit the global space itself, so that we create a community of practice through shared resources. In order for us to really ground the work that we do in the Academic Development Open Virtual Hub, we decided to really build off our foundation on two important facets or documents within the country. The first one is the Africa Agenda 2063, and this speaks to develop well-educated citizens and skills revolution underpinned by science, technology, and innovation. The second important one is quite a common document that is globally positioned, the United Nations SDGs, Sustainable Development Goals. We position more strategically in point number 4, which is to ensure inclusive and equitable quality education and the promotion of lifelong learning opportunities. And secondly, point number 9, which is to build resilient infrastructure, promote inclusive and sustainable industrialization, and foster innovation. Now, in order for us to fulfill our mandate of an open learning approach, the first thing that we needed to do was think of developing an open learning infrastructure. In order to do this, we explored an open low-cost model. To do this, we established the in-house learning management system using Moodle 4.1 on a dedicated cloud server. Now, this was more cost-effective for us so that we can also sustain the initiatives that we have on ADOVH post grant application. Now, our points of access, which is quite important for us, because we wanted an open space, it meant that UNISA staff and students could log in using their own credentials. Participants outside UNISA could use their Microsoft login details, and participants who had neither UNISA or Microsoft login credentials could create their own account on the learning management system and access the training materials. In addition, we customized what we call a large language model LLM virtual assistant powered by an open AI to assist students with questions on the learning management system. So this meant that students can pose a question in any of their MOOCs that they are doing or open courses and get immediate response by the AI to the questions that they pose. Now, the next point is that we really wanted to develop our interventions using a research-based driven approach. And in order to do this, we ran two strategic research interventions. The first one was a student 4IR skills based, where we conducted a baseline assessment of 4IR skills, and we had about 6,082 students complete the survey. The second survey that we did was on teaching, learning, and student support, more specifically in an ODAL institution, and we had about 18,944 students who participated in these surveys. Drawing from these surveys, we then moved on to design interventions, specifically addressing the gaps that came up in through the surveys. So the first thing that we started to do was think of designing interventions, but we wanted an approach that spoke to our context. So we used the massive open online courses, the MOOCs approach, to deliver these training interventions. Now, the approach we used was very strategic for us because 1, it was scalable. Secondly, it fulfilled our open mandate. Third, it provided a virtual distance learning experience with lifelong potential. However, MOOCs are not a common phenomenon in Africa, and therefore we needed to localize the MOOC approach. To do this, we used what we call, or what we termed, an hybrid MOOC model, which catered for self-paced, autonomous, asynchronous learning, as well as facilitator-led webinars, which were synchronous. To support students in the real remote, marginalized areas where only mobile network was available, we hosted face-to-face training sessions in community centers and churches, where we trained students on how to access these MOOCs using their mobile devices. Now, the two MOOCs that we started to develop was the MOOCs Basic Skills for Navigating My Modules on My UNISA. And this was important for us because we had many students coming into the university, or many students not knowing how a learning management system functioned. And we know that if students didn't know how a learning management system functioned, they would not be able to access their learning materials, they would not be able to participate effectively in online learning environment, and this meant a negative impact on student throughput and student retention. So we had about 108,940 students participate in this MOOC. The second MOOC focused on basic skills for online assessments, and this was quite an important one for us because previously, UNISA was venue-based assessments, but when it transitioned to a fully online approach, it meant that students needed to acquire a new set of skills to function in an online environment. And here we had about 148,760 students complete this MOOC. Now, this is quite a large number for us, specifically considering the fact that we were able to provide strategic skills to students to succeed in UNISA's online learning environment. Now, what are the possibilities for students outside of UNISA? That's a good question, because what it meant was that we are not only providing support to students inside UNISA, we were providing support to students that were potential UNISA students to understand how UNISA's open distance e-learning environment worked. In addition, specifically the basic skills for online assessments, where we started to unpack a little bit about the different type of online assessments, was not just valuable for UNISA students, but all students in the country who went into an online mode of delivery. Now, this is quite an important point for us, because when we think of the impact that these MOOCs had, 96% successfully completed these MOOCs, sat for their examination. So we cannot look at whether the students passed their examination or not, because that was not part of our objective. Our objective was really to prepare students with the digital competencies to sit for an assessment and complete their studies. 96% of those students who sat for their examination successfully participated. Now, when we think of the way technology is advancing, we are also thinking of innovation through an open agenda. When we look at some of the innovations that we've explored, the first one is we knew that as we started to work with students across, there was serious digital competencies lacking amongst our students. In order to address this, the first thing that we did was develop a gamified digital literacy MOOC. Now, using H5P content, we decided to use H5P content because of its open nature. But the idea here was to create a fun approach to how we develop basic digital competencies amongst our students. Through simple kind of approaches like drop and drag, students were beginning to use the mouse and understand how to navigate a screen. Some of the themes that we focused on were foundational terms, basic navigation, productivity applications, content sharing, communication, and collaboration. In addition to this, we also looked at how do we localize indigenous knowledge. So we infused African animal characters plus African traditional views, such as how do we brew traditional beer as part of an integrated fun design in this course. So that means as students completed the gamified MOOC, they would get an ingredient, and the ingredient would then allow them to make a traditional brew at the end of the game. Now, the second important facet that we delivered was the digital learning object, which was a digital literacy comic strip. Now, we developed a comic strip that could be used to explain specifically what the terminology digital literacy is. Using this comic strip, we were able to quickly transfer knowledge to our students and to participants. Now, what was interesting in this is that the comic strip was developed in English, but translated into 3 African languages: Sesotho, Setswana, and Zulu. In addition to that, we also thought about how do we ensure that the courses that we are creating, the open resources that we're creating, are built to the quality standards that are globally, plus ensuring that we are up to the current trends and innovating a bit in the space. So the first thing that we did was we developed and ADOVH Mini Studio, which is a fully automated recording and streaming studio. The second element that we developed was the ADOVH Gaming Lab, which is the state-of-the-art gaming lab which allows us to explore gamification, game-based learning as part of our MOOC design. And the third element which we integrated was we're now exploring UNISA has procured its first semi-humanoid robot. And as ADOVH, we are exploring how we can integrate a humanoid robot such as Pepper into our teaching and delivering of these MOOCs to provide our students strategic support. Now, part of the entire deliverables of ADOVH is to develop our digital competencies of our students so that they can have a fair and equitable chance in competing in their studies, completing their studies successfully. But in addition, we also want to prepare our students for industry so that when they pass and have a certificate in their hand, they do not just have a paper, they have the skills to function in a work environment. So colleagues, ladies and gentlemen, this is the work that ADOVH is doing, and we are honored to share with you today what we are currently taking place in ADOVH. Thank you very much.